Just think of that. On the one side is the purpose of God. On the other side, there is a direction from God. It appears to say you need to sacrifice and kill him. You know what Abraham did? He believed God and he obeyed. He believed and he obeyed. Of course, if you read the story, you know that God prevented that from happening. He was able to give another sacrifice and the boy was saved. He didn't want that to happen. It was really a test for Abraham. But what he's saying here is, it was not just belief. That belief was resulted. That belief moved on into obedience, action. Okay, let's move on from here. So, I've got here a staircase. Can you see that? So why did I put a staircase? Let's look at that again. What you hope for and where you currently are. What you hope for is what is the future. God's plans for you. God's promises for you. What you're expecting. What you're believing. This is where you are. You need to climb this ladder from where you are to where God has promised things for you. Okay? Are you hearing what I'm saying? Right. Where is, just think a little bit. Where does God want to take you? And where are you today? How are you going to go from where you are to where God has promised? This destiny for you. And then the answer to that is, first is obedience. But not just obedience. In it's obedience in faith. Believing that by obeying, God's purposes for your life will be fulfilled. Without faith, obedience is meaningless. Without obedience, faith is dead. The two go together. You see, there is a song that used to be sung before. In fact, even today, it is sung sometimes. I think we have sung it here in our churches, in Shiv Samachar. It goes like this. It's just that. Trust and obey. For there's no other way. That means have faith and have obedience. There's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. So what are the faith steps? If you recollect, I said first step is understand. What's the second step? Believe. What's the third step? Trust. Now we have a fourth step. What is the fourth step? Action or obedience. That's right. So these are the steps. But then you have to ask, in whom? That's right. And then there's one more. For what? God's plans and God's promises. Okay? Makes sense? Why do you laugh?
You already?
Do people know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So let's continue. I'll take another few minutes and explain one or two things more. Hebrews 11:1, coming back to that. Now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. That's what we looked at. That's the definition. Then it goes on to say, this is what the ancients were commended for. Now the word commended in English means appreciated. Now who appreciated them? God. And who are the ancients? The ancients are the people in the Old Testament, like Abraham. So when you read Hebrews chapter 11, there is a narration of different Old Testament men of God who were full of faith. And they were commended for it. They were appreciated for it. Putting it in a slightly different way, that means God was pleased with them. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. Here, in this situation, the Old Testament saints, they pleased God because of their faith. Now there are various narrations there, various biographies there, short, brief understanding of different people in the Old Testament. I'm just going to pick up one person. And most of you must have heard about Noah. Noah and his ark. Okay? So we're going to just pick up that. And for that we need to read Hebrews chapter 11 verse 7. I'm conscious that some of you will not know the story too well. So I do need to give you a little background. But let's read Hebrews chapter 11, verse 7. It's the same page, isn't it? No, 1875. Would somebody like to read it?
By faith Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in hope to fear, built an ark to save his family. By his faith he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that comes by faith.
Thank you. Noah was warned about things not yet seen. In holy fear, built an ark to save his family. By his faith, he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that comes from faith. It's really just 3 sentences. But the background to this is, in the time of Noah, the wickedness of man had become very bad. And God brought judgment upon humanity. And that judgment upon humanity was through a flood. You might have heard about the flood. Many people talk about it. Did it really happen? It did not happen. And what God said was, I'm going to destroy humanity through a flood. But in that time, there was one family which was righteous, who found favor with God. And that person was Noah. And we read about this in Genesis chapters 6 to 9. It's in the Old Testament, the first book in the Bible. If you get time, go home and read it. So Noah found favor in the sight of God. He was seen as righteous. So God said, I'm going to destroy humanity, but I'm going to save Noah. Are you with me? And then he gave Noah an instruction. He said, Noah, build an ark. Now, the Bible doesn't give too much information about this, but our understanding is that at that time there was nothing like an ark. No boats around. So, this whole ark, God gave him the instructions. So if you come back to my example here, my structure here. So for the future, if you look at the future in this Noah story, what was God's plans for the future? What is God's plans for the future?
Bring a flood.
One was to bring judgment upon humanity. Is that right? The second was to save Noah and his family. So the promise was, Noah, you will be saved. At the same time, God's plan was to destroy humanity. So that is what we see here. Just going backwards here. Okay? So I'm putting on this side, what did Noah have? He had faith. Faith in God. And what is it? The future was God's plans to judge and destroy humanity for the wickedness. The second thing was God's promise to save Noah and his family. Are you with me? Alright, now in all of this, one part is still missing in my diagram. What is that which is missing? Obedience, the action. And that's what we get here. The obedience. And what was Noah asked to do? You just think of that. People must have been laughing at him. They must have been saying, what is this? You're building right in the middle of the land. You're building a big boat. And therefore a funny shaped boat covered all over. But you see, Noah was not worried about man's opinion. He was worried about God's opinion. And that's what faith is all about. Faith is obeying in spite of the circumstances. Faith is obedience irrespective of what others might say. Faith is standing up for God irrespective of oppression. Okay? Faith is saying, yes, I will stand up for God. Knowing that there's a better purpose. You know, many years ago, when I moved into a church called New Life Fellowship in the city of Bombay, at that time there was a lady who gave the church a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble means a lot of trouble. She would go to the police and do this and do that. From a Christian, at some stage she didn't like something went wrong and she was maybe mentally wrong. There was so much of trouble. Okay? So, how did we want to handle it? So when I came into this church, I stepped into that whole thing. And I said,